Serious, what's the creepiest, scariest thing that you've seen but no one believes you? I was out partying with my friends and came home pretty late. I didn't want my parents asking questions, so I snuck in through the garage. The door was locked, but I had a key. I turned the key to unlock it, but then I heard an abrupt snap and the door locked again. I repeated this 3 times. Each time I unlocked the door relocked. Exasperated, I cried out, "Mom, it's me." Then I heard the door unlock. I opened the door and no one was there. I saw something crouched in the road driving around one night. Its eyes glowed when my headlights hit it, so I assumed an animal of some sort, but when I got within about 15 feet of it, it stood up and looked like a girl standing there. I slammed on my brakes immediately, but suddenly the road was just empty. My friend in the car hadn't seen anything, but asked me a few minutes later if it looked like a girl. He'd apparently seen something similar with his sister a few weeks before in the exact same spot.
Hey guys, much like you, I love reading people's stories on Ask Reddit. Unfortunately, there's a lot of weird middle school level, just thought experiment type hypotheticals like "nice try, Baskin Robbins." I don't find this compelling, so that's why I've made it my mission to trawl and crawl through Ask Reddit and find the very best content and put it in your ears. That's why I'm begging you, like and subscribe. If there's anything I can do to help you out, give you the kind of content that you crave to help you get through your workday, let me know in a comment. But please like and subscribe.
I was 15 years old, was in law for a convention and Disneyland trip. There was a large group of us. My best friend and I were sitting next to each other on the bus. As we're driving from the airport, both my friend and I watch 2 people exit this house on the corner. One starts to run, and the other pulls a pistol out and shoots him down. Then shoots him again. We both looked at each other thinking, holy shit. We told some adults on the trip, and they told us we hadn't seen that and it never happened. Update, it was February 16, 2005. Our flight left at 3 something in the morning, the flight not being long from Northern California. When we got on the bus big like a greyhound from the airport, everyone fell asleep. It was still dark out. My best friend and I weren't tired. The gunshots weren't loud. I grew up around guns. The 2 adults we told were not our parents, but chaperones. They acted like we were crazy, but we know what we saw. To this day I feel like they were dumb adults. No iPhones. We took all our pictures for the trip on disposable cameras and Nikons. We were headed to the Law Religious Education Congress Youth Day. We weren't religious, but went for the Disneyland trip. We got to miss school and go to Disneyland. It seemed worth sitting through a day of stuff we had no attachment to. I have since researched MERS throughout the area and haven't found a thing. One time a door to my house's office slammed open when I woke up at 6 a.m. Naturally, it slowly opens on its own due to the weight distribution. It takes about 8 seconds to fully open, but it slammed open like it was forced. It was 6 a.m. in the middle of winter, so no windows were open to create a draft, and everyone was asleep. I was too tired for some ghostly bullshit, so I peed and went back to sleep. I wasn't in bed as it happened. I got up to walk to the bathroom, but the office door is visible from my bedroom entrance. About a year ago I was up watching movies late at night when I got hungry and went downstairs for a snack. My room is across from my daughter's room and her door was open. As I was coming back upstairs, I start turning left towards my room when I hear, clear as ever, "Daddy, can you close the door?" I turn around, don't say much and just close it. Once I'm back in my room, I lie down to watch television when it hits me. My daughter isn't there. She's spending the night at my parents'. I get up and go to her room and sure enough, it's empty. I woke up my wife and she thinks I'm crazy. Says I was probably tired and maybe it was the television. I remember the voice so clear and coming in the direction of her room. It's very possible that it was just my head playing games, but it definitely made me question a few things. I worked at a small gas station in my small town when I was in my late teens. I was stocking sodas around back in the storage room. A man startled me, then apologized. He asked me for directions to Washington, D.C. I gave him the best directions I could. I sent him toward Philadelphia. He thanked me and went to his car. There was a kid about my age sitting in the passenger seat. He gave me the most evil stare I've ever seen. They pulled off and I forgot about it and got back to work. I remember watching the news sometime later when they arrested the DC snipers. It was them for sure. Sent chills through my spine. I'm glad they spared me. I've only told a few people because I'm afraid people won't believe me. It still makes me feel a bit uncomfortable when I think about it. When I was about 12 or 13, I woke up in the middle of the night and smelled my father's cologne. Thought it was a little odd since he lived about an hour away but was too tired to care. Went back to sleep, woke up the next morning, and for some reason my mother didn't wake me up for school. My father had passed away the night before. Never told anyone for years about that night, but around the age of 23 I told my mom. She was glad to know that she wasn't crazy. That same night she got startled awake, and the dog was staring at the door wagging his tail, almost like he was saying goodbye before fully leaving. I was dozing on the couch at my parents' place last year, not comfortably because I was cold. Then I felt a wave of heat pass over me, which was pleasant enough until I felt these firm, pointed fingertips on my head, like something was standing behind me with its hands on my scalp. I was frightened but then grabbed them and threw them off me. A few minutes later my mum came in and said she heard a door open and had got the feeling she should check on me. Probably a dream, but it was super creepy. I was 6 and remember playing in my room, and my grandpa walks in and talks to me for a few minutes. After a bit he gets up and tells me to be a good girl for Mom, kisses me on the forehead, and walks out. Mum comes in about 5 minutes later hysterical and told me my grandpa had died overnight and we had to leave to go be with the family 2 states over where he lived. My wife and I were driving up through northern Arizona on Highway 89 between Flagstaff and Page. It was about 1 a.m. as we were on 3rd shift at the time and often drove at night to avoid traffic. I saw a few sets of eyes glowing in my headlights a little ways up the road, so I let off the gas, slowing down to avoid hitting an animal in the road. When we drove by we saw several dogs' coyotes on the side of the road, and I hit the gas and drove by. After we passed, my wife said one of them was running next to the car, and I looked over and saw it as well, probably 20 feet off the shoulder of the road. I floored it and looked over, and it stood up on its hind legs. That's the only way I can describe it, and kept pace with us for a couple seconds before turning away from the road and disappearing. This whole event probably lasted no more than 10 seconds, but it was seriously the most terrifying 10 seconds of my life. This was probably 20 years ago, and we still rarely talk about it.
Do you have any idea how convenient it is to use a Keurig machine for brewing coffee or tea? Personally, I gave up coffee a long time ago, but I was able to get a great, delicious cup of coffee in just seconds with no cleanup, no extra work, using a Keurig machine and a K-cup. And now I use my Keurig machine to brew tea, loose leaf tea, every day that I drink. And I also use it to make oatmeal and, anything else that you can put hot water into. So if you don't have a Keurig machine in your house, you're missing out. Try my affiliate link below in the description of the video, and you too can enjoy a great cup of coffee in seconds, any time of day.
When I was little, between 6 and 11, I'd experienced what I later found out to be Alice in Wonderland syndrome. My blanket would feel like it was 6 inches thick. My room would grow longer as I looked down across my bed. My stuffed animal would get smaller. I could hear echoes of pretty much any little sound, and sometimes I felt like I was shrinking. I'm not sure why it stopped, but I'm definitely happy it did. About 4 years ago now, I was at work late dealing with some closing issues. It took longer than usual, so I ended up being the last to leave. It was pretty late at around 8 p.m. My place of work isn't in the middle of nowhere, nor is it in a bad part of town. It's in a normal, nice area, but it is usually abandoned after 7 p.m. When I get outside, I hop in my car and prepare to pull out into the street. As I stop, look both ways, I suddenly notice two figures standing to my left on the sidewalk. Thing is, they were both dressed in whitish bodysuits from head to toe and rapidly approaching my car, as in headed straight for the driver's door with little room to mistake their intent, whatever the end goal might have been. I fucking hoofed the gas down and turned down the street like a motherfucker. My mirror showed them both moving my way on foot, which alarmed me since I live in a nearby neighborhood barely a 5-minute walk from there. Didn't think beyond getting home and locking the door. Nobody else was on the street, near the parking lot, or anything. My town isn't known for dangerous types or shenanigans, but fuck me if that didn't scare me. Two stranger assholes in head-to-toe bodysuits. It wasn't Halloween and they looked conspicuous as hell, but nobody else saw them. What the fuck? To answer the perfectly legitimate question as to why I drive to work when living so close. My neighborhood is up along a pretty decent hill, and after 8 hours on my feet retail job, I found driving home to be the preferred option. Also, I was young, stupid, and scared. Driving straight home was not the right thing to do. A few years back, my dad and I headed deep into the Utah countryside to watch the Perseid meteor showers. We were leaning against our car when we heard the loudest screeching sound coming from the darkness. We didn't stay to find out what it was. We jetted into the car and we bolted out of there. Used to live in a 2-story house with 5 dudes. The upstairs had a kitchen with a sliding glass door going out to the deck. The downstairs had a family room with one of those enclosed staircases that turned at the bottom so you couldn't see the person coming down until the last 4 steps. One day I was playing SNES with one of the guys and we were the only 2 home. Heard the sliding glass door open and slam shut, then very loud and very fast footsteps pounding down the stairs, then suddenly nothing. But nobody came down. We both looked at each other like WTF was that? I called out the name of my since it was close to the time he comes home from work, but total silence. The 2 of us slowly crept upstairs to find the slider was locked and nobody else was home. We NOP'd the fuck outside to chain smoke cigarettes until my came home 20 minutes later. None of our roommates need ever believed us, but that was hands down the freakiest shit I've ever experienced, and I wasn't alone, so I knew I wasn't crazy. Thump, 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 thump coming at us like the goddamn exorcist down the stairs. A lot of people have said this was a burglar, which is possible, but my car was in the driveway where the yard and deck slider were located. It was also 3 p.m.-ish in a decent neighborhood, with our neighbor having a big nosy dog in the next yard that barked at everything. Not an ideal house to rob, but I could be wrong, as this seems like the most logical explanation. It also was not a townhome or connected to the neighbors at all. Just a 2-story single-family home built in maybe the October 1st, 2024 or October 1st, 2024, with a big yard around the entire property. I still live in the area, and whenever I've driven past the house it gives me bad juju tingles, and it feels like someone is watching me from the big picture window in front. Yes, I know cigarettes are bad and I haven't smoked for 17 years, thank you moms. The silver tic-tac. The thing the Face Super Hornet recorded in 2004 that you can now see on YouTube. It was in 2010 over Olympia, or at least from my vantage point, that's what it looked like. I was in a boat on Henderson Bay with my parents, so there are 2 people who believe me. We saw this silvery ovalish thing flying about at incredible speeds. 1 second, it'd be over the city, the next, it'd be by the Olympics. It did this, dancing back and forward, juking and jigging, and then finally just pausing on a dime over the city. It went vertical and just vanished. The thing that unnerved my dad was the fact that it was silent. So retired engineer, and said that we should be hearing sonic booms at the speeds the thing was moving at. The way it flashed between the city and the Olympics was unreal. It was broad daylight, no clouds. Then, 8 years later, I see what looks like the same thing from that Hornet footage. I don't know what we saw, but it broke the laws of physics as I understand them. The Super Hornet footage was stargazing with my family and noticed a satellite moving slowly across the sky. Looks like this for those who don't know. My uncle says, "Oh, there's another," and points at another light moving slowly across the sky. Then my aunt goes, "Well, look how many," and points to a cluster of about 15-20 white dots. Looked like a bunch of satellites slowly moving in a cluster together across the sky. "Wow, that's weird," we all collectively agreed as we watched this cluster of unknown lights move across the sky. Then they came to a dead stop instantly. The lights then began to slowly move around each other until they eventually were in a single line across the sky, and they slowly faded away into the darkness. We all still have no idea what the hell they were, and the only thing that makes me know I wasn't just seeing things is that all 6 of us all saw this happening. This was the summer of 2015 in Sun River, Oregon. Apparently a lot of people have similar experiences. Mostly people also from the same area or neighboring states, with a few exceptions in Germany, Australia, the UK, British Columbia, and Spain. Alright, I guess this is a worldwide thing people have seen. Time period for people's sighting ranged from the early October 1st, 2024 to this year. Last edit for tonight, night all, 3:30 a.m. My buddy and I spent the night reaping cars. We pull up to the light in Manchester, NJ of 527 and 70. Going straight. In the left turn lane, getting onto 70 East, a blue 9798 Honda CR-V. The person driving had no face. Just blank. Like the green man from Always Sunny or No Face from Dick Tracy. My buddy and I both saw it. Nobody believed it. Was out camping near Crater Lake or alone. Trekked in about 10 miles from the trail with very light gear and made camp on a ridge overlooking this valley. Wake up in the middle of the night to shouting in the distance. Look down in the valley and see 2 flashlights moving in one direction. I figure it's some campers night hiking or playing a game. So I just observe. It becomes apparent they are looking for someone. I can barely hear them, but once in a while they shout out something like, "We will find you," or "Come out." I can't remember exactly, but it was like they were toying with someone. Hide and go seek. That's what I'm thinking. Weird, but whatever. Eventually I see both lights turn suddenly and bolt in one direction. From what I can make out, they found who they were looking for. Again, I can't see much except for the flashlight's beams. The 2 flashlight people are laughing maniacally now, and it's creepy. Then I hear a loud woman's scream, and the movement of the lights stops in one spot and she continues to scream. It then sounds like she's being beaten and raped. I have no clue what to do. I'm unarmed and quite far from them. So I pack up camp and decide to head to the ranger's station. No cell service. It's rough terrain at night and I'm off trail with no GPS, and while I have great sense of direction normally, at night I can't see my landmarks. So to be safe I stop and decide to wait for sun up. Hardly sleep, and as the sun comes up I figure out where I am and continue back to my car and the ranger's station. I finally arrive exhausted, but the station is closed. I find the number to the parks service and make a report. They thank me and said they would send out search and rescue. I follow the news the next couple days but don't hear anything and am extremely curious. So I call back the parks service and ask to speak to the same guy I filed the report with. Apparently they found the people almost immediately, all camped out together. After some questioning it comes out that they 2 men and 1 woman were playing a sex-game rape fantasy in the woods. It was a relief to learn that no one was harmed, but holy fuck, it freaked me out. My wife and I are almost always together. It's rare that we spend more than a few hours apart. One time though she went on a trip with her mother, so I had the house to myself for a week. On the second night, as I was dead asleep, I heard her voice ask, "Are you sleeping?" I jolted awake, groggily said yes, and fell back asleep. It wasn't till morning that I realized she wasn't there. I told her about it, and we both agreed that it was probably just the fact that I am so accustomed to her presence that when she was gone my brain just decided to edit her into my perception. Probably what happened with you, or ghosts. About 7 or 8 years ago I visited a friend a few cities over. They live in a fairly rural area, with some forested area behind their house. It was house, then after fence, then maybe 200-ish feet beyond the fence is this forested area. My friend and his family claim spooky shit happened in this forested area, but I didn't believe it. Nevertheless, this kind of thing really fascinates me, so while I don't believe in paranormal or the supernatural, it's still interesting to humor the thought. I brought a hat with me when I stayed with them. It was a black hat with Jimi Hendrix's signature embroidered on it, my favorite hat at the time. I was told by my friend if I tossed the hat beyond the fence, not necessarily into the forested area, it'd appear in or close to their house. So I did. Tossed it over the fence one night, and lo and behold, in the morning it was on their front porch. Whatever, anyone could have done that. Nothing spooky about that. I tried it again a couple of times with the same end result, on their porch or by my belongings indoors each time. And each time monitoring my friend in the process to make sure he doesn't grab it and move it. Whatever, his brother or sister might be in on it. I took one of my friend's items unbeknownst to him, a belt buckle, and threw it over the fence, noting where I tossed it so I can grab it later. I didn't have to because it suffered the same fate on the front porch a couple hours later. This one confused me, but I was still skeptical, so chalked it up to one of their family members seeing me and doing it. This all culminated when my friend and I went into the forested area one night. We brought flashlights and I wore my hat. After a few minutes in, the flashlights went out at the same time. He stopped and told me to run back. I didn't question him. There might be a wild animal or something and I don't care to get bit or harmed, so I bolted. To note is that he sprinted a few seconds before so he had a measurable head start. In the process, I dropped my hat. I didn't care. I ran. When we got back inside the house, my hat was waiting for me in my suitcase. No one was with us, especially no one who could have grabbed my hat and went the long way back to his house faster than us. My friend didn't grab it either, since he was already gone when I dropped it. To compound this, we were the only ones at the house that night, and it was locked. I still don't understand to this day, but I did leave my hat with him, half wishing it would appear at home several 100 kilometers away, but no dice. Some other weird stuff happened, but this was the biggest example of weirdness.
I turned 36 this year, and I decided to focus on my physical fitness, so I bought a swim club membership. The only problem was, most of the time when I go swimming, I wind up getting an ear infection. So it turns out that normal earplugs, they kind of irritate your ear canal, they don't really work, they don't keep the water out, but there is an amazing kind of earplug called Mack's Pillow Soft Silicone earplugs that, they feel great, they keep the water out 100%, they're reusable, and they don't irritate your ear canal at all, no issues. If you've ever had a severe ear infection, you don't want to experience that again. It can permanently damage your hearing if you're unlucky. So investing in these earplugs is definitely a good idea. Also, when my baby was crying later this year and I could not get to sleep, I used the same earplugs and they worked great. I was able to sleep right next to a crying baby. So be sure to click my affiliate link and purchase some of these Mack's earplugs today.
One time our family dog ran away. He was super shy and scared very easily. We got him from an animal testing lab. So we gathered all friends and family which we could get our hands on, and shortly after he bailed there were numerous search parties, altogether about 24 people looking for him. After a whole day of searching without any sign of the dog, the sun was setting slowly. I was standing on the edge of the forest, where I searched and called for the whole day, and suddenly saw a deer just October 1st, 2024 from me staring directly in my eyes. We stared at each other for at least a minute, no move and no sound. Then I asked with a smoothing voice, "Did you happen to come across a lost beagle?" I swear to God, till this day, the deer nodded and looked down on the ground where it was standing. Then it jumped away into the woods. I was thinking to myself that I just imagined that nod and the dog could not sit next to the deer without making any noise. But I could not check, and yes, there he was sitting in the exact spot, scared to death and shaking of fear. I gasped and cuddled the dog, took him on my arm and looked into the woods where the deer disappeared. There it was again, staring at me, directly in the eyes. I had tears of joy and was so unbelievable grateful while at the same time confused as fuck. Since that day I never ate deer again. Here is a link to a photo of the little rascal. Meet Tammy. Kind of a scene, kind of an experience. When I was about 15 years old, school night, I woke up in the middle of the night. I remember looking at the clock. It was about 1:30 a.m. I went to the kitchen to make some hot tea to take back to bed with me. Now, our kitchen was attached to the dining room, which was a step down from the kitchen. The kitchen and the dining room both had large sliding glass doors and big windows facing the backyard, all on the same wall. The cabinets and counter where we kept the tea was opposite the wall of windows, and it made a little corner. I remember walking into the kitchen with the lights off, going to the tea corner of the kitchen, and then standing in the corner looking at the windows and sliding glass doors. I felt like someone was watching me through them. I got that gut feeling, you know, the one. I stood there for about a minute, very still, like maybe they wouldn't see me if I didn't move. Then I went back to my room, without making the tea. When I got back to my room, the clock read 5 a.m. I had been standing in the kitchen for 3.5 hours, and I had no idea how that was possible, because it only felt like maybe a minute. To this day, it is still the weirdest thing that has ever happened to me. My mum never believed me when I told her because she never felt anything bad in our house. I never did either, but that night I absolutely did. I was staying in a very run-down ebb with my girlfriend and we were both up late. I was trying to scare her since the building was super old, so I called out, "If there's a ghost, slam that door shut," and the fucking thing slams shut 2 seconds after I say that. We both were just quiet, we didn't know what to do. Likely a coincidence, but still enough to creep the fuck out of you. I was once waiting for the metro in Shanghai and saw a woman in tears frantically run past. She stopped dead in her tracks and seemed to be searching for a train on either platform, but there was none coming. She was yelling something, but I didn't speak the language, so I don't know what. She then ran into the nearby bathroom. About 30 seconds later, 2 men in ordinary clothes came barreling down the escalator. They were shouting, but again, I don't know what. They began walking up and down the track yelling, and then went into the bathroom the woman was seemingly hiding in. A few seconds later they emerged, dragging the woman away. She was screaming, crying, and fighting like hell to get away from them. The men just kept screaming back at her, shaking her violently and striking the back of her head while they forcibly carried her up the stairs. Everyone on the platform just gawked, mouths agape, but no one did a thing. And then, mere seconds later, the entire scene was over and people were back to staring at their phones as if whatever the hell that was didn't just happen. I thought about that. My dad always taught me to greet everyone with a smile and a handshake, and that is what I did. They shot a pregnant woman though, so I don't think they had a conscience. I think it may have been because of the security cameras my boss had up.
This year, like I said, I'm having a midlife crisis. I've started a YouTube channel and I'm on a big health kick. One thing that I found is very easy to eat, very easy to prepare, is I heat up chickpeas with chicken broth and tikka masala. And there are 2 schools of thought about how you should eat beans. Some people believe you should buy the dry beans and soak them, but I tried that and it was a disaster. So I buy canned beans every time. And if I'm opening like 2 cans a day to be on this diet, it is a massive pain in the ass if the can has this jagged metal edge I'm worried if like little bits of metal are getting into my food, I'm going to slice up my intestines. So I found this special can opener that actually opens the can in a way that is completely safe, no metal's getting in your food, and is 1,000 times better than any other can opener I've ever used. So if you wind up, opening a lot of cans for whatever reason, maybe you've got a cat or something, you must buy this can opener from my affiliate link.